In the sun-scorched lands of ancient Canaan, a bitter rivalry festered, not just between kings and armies, but between gods. Two immense powers vied for the souls of humanity: Baal, the mighty storm god, and Moloch, the child devourer, the king of dreadful sacrifice. This was more than a theological dispute. It was a war for cosmic supremacy, fought in the temples and on the battlefields of warring city-states. The followers of Baal looked to the skies, praying for rain and fertility, seeing their god in the life-giving tempest. But the devotees of Moloch looked to the flames, believing that true power, purification, and divine favor could only be bought with the most terrible price. This conflict shaped the destiny of an entire civilization. So why are these two titanic figures, Baal and Moloch, so often mistaken for one another? The confusion is ancient, woven into the very fabric of sacred and apocryphal texts. Some scholars argue that Moloch was not a name, but a title derived from the Semitic root MLK, meaning king. It's possible that Moloch was a horrific descriptor for a type of ritual called a Molech sacrifice that could have been offered to various deities, including, in some twisted instances, a darker aspect of Baal himself. The biblical prophets, in their righteous fury, often condemned the Canaanite pantheon as a whole, blurring the lines between individual gods to emphasize their collective opposition to the Israelite God, Yahweh. The result is a historical puzzle, where Baal the storm lord and Moloch the fiery king become entangled, their identities overlapping in a haze of ancient condemnation and scholarly debate. At the heart of their rivalry lies a stark contrast in symbolism: the storm versus the fire. Baal, the rider of the clouds, wielded thunder and lightning. His storms could be destructive, yet they were also the source of life-giving rain, promising harvests and prosperity. His worship was a celebration of nature's cycles, of life, death, and rebirth. Moloch, on the other hand, was pure consumption. His element was fire, not the gentle flame of the hearth, but a ravenous, all-devouring inferno. For his followers, fire was the ultimate agent of transformation and purification. It was a gateway to the divine, a trial by which the faithful worshippers demonstrated their ultimate devotion. Where Baal's storm promised renewal on earth, Moloch's fire promised a terrible transcendence, a passage through the flames into the presence of a terrifying absolute power. This divine struggle was mirrored on the ground as Canaanite city-states chose their celestial patrons. Coastal cities like Ugarit, heavily reliant on maritime trade and agriculture, predominantly revered Baal. His control over the rains and seas made him their natural protector and benefactor. Their politics and prosperity were intrinsically linked to his favor. But in other regions, particularly among the Ammonites in the inland kingdoms, Moloch held sway. Their capital, Rabbah, is cited in Scripture as a major center for his worship. The reasons were likely complex, a mix of cultural tradition, political identity, and perhaps a belief that in their harsh, arid environment, only the most extreme sacrifices could secure survival and victory against their enemies. Allegiance to Moloch was a declaration of strength, a willingness to embrace the harshest of paths to power, setting them apart from their Baal-worshipping neighbors in a constant, simmering conflict. As ages passed and empires fell, the old gods of Canaan did not simply vanish. They were transformed. In the crucible of medieval demonology, pagan deities were systematically rebranded as infernal creatures, and few were recast with such terrifying gravity as Moloch. Christian and Jewish scholars, looking back at the biblical condemnations, saw not a rival god, but a prince of hell. He was no longer just a foreign deity. He was a tempter, a corrupter, a high-ranking demon in the hierarchy of the abyss. This reinterpretation wasn't just a theological shift. It was a deliberate act of spiritual warfare, turning a symbol of a defeated religion into a universal icon of evil, a cautionary figure whose very name became a synonym for the ultimate corruption of faith. From the pages of scripture, Moloch slithered into the darkest corners of occult literature, into the grimoires. In these abominable books of magic which claimed to hold the secrets to summoning and commanding spirits, Moloch appears as a formidable and dreadful power. Texts like the Dictionnaire Infernal depict him, sometimes conflated with other entities. He is depicted as a crowned bull, or a man with a bull's head, seated on a brazen throne wreathed in fire. These descriptions cemented his image as a being of immense authority and terrifying appearance. Sorcerers who dared to invoke his name sought not blessings but power over others, knowledge of hidden things, and the ability to command the destructive force of fire. He became a patron of dark ambition, a demonic king promising worldly power in exchange for one's soul. But why has Moloch, above so many other ancient figures, become so inextricably linked with judgment, fire, and sacrifice? It stems from the sheer horror of his biblical portrayal. The act of passing a child through the fire was seen as the most profound abomination, a complete inversion of the sacred bond between parent and child. This act made Moloch the ultimate symbol of corrupted authority and divine judgment. Fire, in this context, is not just an element. It is the wrath of God made manifest, a purifying yet annihilating force. And sacrifice to Moloch is not a gift, but a surrender to nihilism, the ultimate act of giving up the future, symbolized by the child, for a fleeting moment of perceived power or deliverance. He embodies the terrifying idea that judgment can be invoked not just by a righteous God, but by a demonic one, through acts of unspeakable cruelty. So once again, who is Moloch? He is a shadow with many faces. He was the rival god of Canaan, a king of fire who warred against the Lord of the storm. He is a demon of the grimoires, a fallen angel enthroned in hell, offering abominable power to those who dared to call his name. He is the embodiment of sacrifice at its most terrible, the symbol of authority corrupted into tyranny. Moloch is not just a figure from history. He is a timeless archetype of the darkness that lurks within the human heart, the temptation to sacrifice our most precious values on the altar of power. His story is a haunting echo through the centuries, a chilling reminder that the fires of Moloch, once lit, are never easily extinguished. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark. If you seek to understand the shadows, make sure to subscribe and follow our descent.